حالا بتعلم.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Starshine Legacy for this, the third game, The Legend of Pandoria. We're playing as Anne this time around, and Anne gets up to some questionable stuff, but she has it where it counts in the end, when the chips are down. She's trying to get a modeling career by posing in this photo shoot, and hey, you know, that's as valid a dream as any other. One of our friends, Alex, just mentioned that Jessica also plans to win. Who is Jessica, you might ask? Why is she being treated like a known quantity? Good question. First, let's talk to the janitor. He has a very prudish outlook on the whole photography business. But yeah, Jessica, not Sabine, not to be confused with Sabine, who was in the prior two games as the mean girl. Jessica's a completely different mean girl. That right there, that's Ms. Graham. We don't want her to catch us because she'll chastise us for not doing our schoolwork. Here goes Anne talking about Jessica again in a familiar capacity, even though she's never been seen previously, and again, she is not Sabine from the first two games. And this is Derek. Anne has a crush on Derek, and Derek is the photographer for Glamour No. 5. Derek is not to be confused with Josh, even though Josh is another boy that Anne also has a crush on who was also featured in the prior two games. So we've got a new mean girl who again is not the established mean girl, and we've got a new crush who again is not the established crush. Are we ever going to see Sabine and Josh again? I'll let you take a guess. Anyway, right now we're trying to find Derek's film reel because it's been lost, and the way to the library is blocked, which seems suspicious. Doubly suspicious because it's being blocked by a guy who works for Dark Core. No clue what he's doing in the school or why someone hasn't removed him. Anyway, we're going to see what Linda can do about it, because Linda's the smart one. She's really the brains of the operation, you know, especially if the last game has taught us anything. So let's see how she plans to distract the guard. It should be good. Alright, so her plan was to run right up to him, bother him, and then run away screaming. Thanks for taking one for the team, Linda. Seems out of character, seems awfully stupid of you, but good job. I guess the rest of us are just going to go about our business, like you're not being chased by a grown man with dark intentions. So the film reel is in here, but so is one of the hidden golden stars. We're going to grab that first. The film reel being hidden in here, behind a Dark Core guard, implies that Jessica is somehow tangled up in the Dark Core conspiracy, and maybe has something to do with that eldritch monster we learned about in the previous game sleeping under the sea near Jorvik. Now granted, this certainly isn't stuff that Anne would be able to piece together herself, but it is very comical. It is a very comical proposition that this mean girl is somehow messing with the photo shoot to serve her dark masters. And now that we got his film reel back, we can join the photo shoot after we let Ms. Graham pass. We don't want to get caught, after all. So yeah, you can see how the writing in this one maybe not up to the same standards as the prior two games. Like, almost immediately in Mystery of the Soul Riders and The Secret of Pine Hill Manor, they introduced Linda and Lisa in ways that they were immediately profoundly recognizable as human beings with their own troubles. Linda was a hard-thinking overachiever who felt like she had the world on her shoulders, and Lisa was addled by trauma and needed to reach out in compassion to overcome it, and we're being bullied by a girl who's ruining our photo shoot. I'm not saying Anne's plight is meaningless, but it does lack a bit of punch in comparison, you know? And this dialogue is downright alien. The way these characters talk about Jessica, about what they're going to do to get rid of her, it feels like robots pretending to be human or aliens pretending to be human, which I guess fits because in the first game, I think it was, Josh did say that Anne was basically an alien. And, you know, maybe that's why Josh disappeared and got replaced with a new crush. I'm not saying Anne did anything personally, but, you know, it's just a funny coincidence that Josh insulted Anne and then he happened to disappear. Haha, yes, that's a cool plan, Alex. I'll go and get the phone now and hide it, then you girls call her. That's how people talk. That's how normal human people communicate with each other, especially teenagers. We're supposed to be firmly sympathetic toward Anne throughout this entire game, but what we're doing right now, grabbing Jessica's cell phone and hiding it so she can't attend the photo shoot, that's very mean. Like, we're not doing a nice or good thing. And as you're seeing here, if Jessica was involved in this photo shoot in a sinister capacity... look at that award-winning Starshine Legacy AI. If Jessica was involved in this photo shoot in a sinister capacity, which it's likely she is, her involvement doesn't make sense, but we'll get to that when we get to it. While it does feel a little irresponsible that they never point out the unhealthy things Anne is doing, she does get character depth later, and it's revealed more slowly than with Lisa and Linda. It feels like her character was made harder to sympathize with by accident rather than by design, and I much prefer when it's by design, but either way, I find a kind of understated beauty to her story. Anyway, Derek wants to take photos of us back at the stables, which I guess makes sense. There is something glamorous about being a professional show writer, even if we're not professional yet. You know, that's why we're doing this. We're moving up the social ladder. We're a special golden-haired princess, and we're going to show the world what we're made of. Specifically, we're going to show them by stealing cell phones. I think they tend to overfocus on Anne's petty nature in this game instead of her self-driven dignity and, like, her determination, which are her strongest assets. For some reason, they write Anne to be a bit airheaded and petulant, which feels wrong. Don't get me wrong, it's really cool that there's a character who cares about fashion and her appearance, and it's alright that she's a bit vain and arrogant. My Little Pony did this sort of protagonist really well with Rarity, Witch did it really well with Cornelia, but in Anne's case, they just write her... Wow, the Pink Floyd's looking a lot more black lately. But with Anne, as I was saying, they write her a lot more mean, a lot dumber, and it really feels like they were close to something a lot more profound, because she does get some character depth that you'll see later, and it's worthwhile, even if it isn't as immediately punchy or poignant as Lisa and Linda's struggles, you know, like, there is something here, and as the story goes on, we'll see what it is, but it feels like they could have done so much more. But for now, we need to stay focused. We gotta talk with Mr. Herman, make sure things are on the up and up with Concord, and, you know, maybe have a quick chat with Lisa and Derek before we get in the saddle. It is worth noting that, unfortunately, the golden stars in this location are in the same place they were in the previous game. This game seems higher effort in some areas, but that, regrettably, is not one of them. This next conversation with Lisa is particularly strange. Anne brings up Derek and brings up that she has a crush on Derek, and neither Lisa or Anne mention Josh, even though they've both been involved with and romantically interested in Josh previously. Anne also basically just calls Lisa a nut job for thinking that Starshine spoke to her, which isn't great. They address this later, but only briefly so. And again, I do think there's a sort of understated beauty to that approach, but things are much more forward-facing, more blatant in all the other games. And I don't mean to imply that these girls are owned by or own Josh and his engagement or romantic interest, but it's weird that he was brought up in both prior games and is just gone now. Anyway, when we're done flirting with Derek and hissing at not Sabine, I almost called her Sabine, her name is Jessica, we're gonna go grab Concord and finally get to some horse riding, ideally. You know, I'm pining over Anne's lost potential, but all the characters have some of that. Like, with Linda, there are things that are unhealthy about her engagement that she could have also addressed. Like, she's so fiercely independent that she doesn't ask for help, even when it's very, very warranted. Like, with the dam that maybe nearly flooded all of Jorvik. You know, they could have had a bit where Linda learned to ask for help from others and reach out in times of dire stress, but they didn't do that. According to the handler here, Concord's been feeling a bit odd lately. Hopefully nothing sinister is afoot. Or a hoof, I guess. Because that would put a real damper on our photo shoot if some sort of magical nonsense got involved. It is worth noting that for all of Anne's character flaws, she is deeply, deeply invested in Concord's welfare. Like, hardly a scene goes by where she doesn't mention Concord in some capacity, some positive capacity. And, you know, that sort of fits with her upbringing and general attitude. When you're of a higher class mindset, I guess you could say, you learn to take really, really good care of what's yours, all of your assets, including your horses. Yes, we are still doing Mean Girl stuff right now. It's not even particularly good Mean Girl stuff. Like, if done well, the tension of Mean Girl interactions is quite palpable, but it's just so G-rated and transparent in this game. Like, wow, we're really actually upset that Derek is calling Jessica Jess instead of her full name Jessica. That's the sort of dialogue, the sort of internal dialogue we've got going right now. Okay, I need to pay attention. We're about to learn how this new type of horse riding event goes, and it's very integral that I parse this. So I really need to focus up on what Herman's saying here. You know, when I play games, I like to really get into the role of the character, and Anne cares a lot about this dressage. Anne cares a lot about this writing thing we're about to do. So I need to care a lot about it, because if I look bad, it makes her look bad, and it makes Concord look bad. It probably makes her whole family look bad. So it is absolutely essential to understand every single word that is passing the screen right now. Without pause, my mind needs to be dialed in. If even for one moment I get distracted and slip up and one of Herman's words just slides right through, then it's over. It's over for me. Oh my god, are we starting? So I'm going to be real with you, I didn't 100% catch everything Herman told us to do, but I think I get the gist of it. We follow the arrows and try to do the things that the arrows tell us to do. Okay, I didn't do that one. I didn't do it good enough. I accidentally sped up there, that's no good. But I understand basic design language. You go where the arrows are pointing, you grab the blue stars. The total score, not so high right now, but that's okay. That's okay. Now is the time to focus. I want to make this game look good. I want to get that... a 100 score might be out of the reach, but maybe we can aim for like a 60. And it's important to not get distracted by talking about, say, how this game seems to have a higher production value than the prior two. Did you notice that, like, cold open cutscene where we saw a shadowy figure emerge beyond, like, this golden veil? That sort of thing, even if it wasn't accompanied by voice acting, it feels practically opulent by Starshine Legacy standards, almost lavish, luxurious. Like, it had real subtitles as dialogue instead of the in-game text boxes. It came before the opening crawl, which nothing has previously, it sets a new precedent, a new standard. It's telling you, hey, we're taking this game seriously. There's some important stuff's going down in this one. And fitting with that vibe, the vibe that they're just trying a little bit harder this time around, there's a lot more gameplay in this game than in the prior two as well. Even in the first mission, which was mostly fetch quests, there was an element of stealth to it. If Ms. Graham caught us 3 times, we would have to retry the stage. This stage, this is practically all gameplay. I assume. I'm not doing great at it, but I think it's interactive. There's also more complex AI scripting in this one than in the previous game. Sometimes that's not a good thing, but it's there. And now it's time for Anne to go through her own revelation of destiny, similar to Lisa, kinda. Because of the way she is, she doesn't really take it the same way. Also, it just so happens that her horse, Concord, is exactly as haughty as she is and agrees with her about everything. I do like how Derek's reminding her that they're in the middle of a photo shoot while she's having this, soul-searching moment with her horse. I wonder what he thinks is happening right now. And while Anne's busy circle-jerking with her horse, Derek gently reminds them again, hey, we're in the middle of a photo shoot, what's going on over there? Are you alright? We gotta get this moving. But yeah, I do find it interesting, though I don't know whether it's good or bad, that Concord basically perfectly fits with Anne. With Meteor, there was a contrast between Linda and her horse, and with Starshine, both characters had trauma, but for different reasons, and they needed to overcome them together. But with Anne, Concord's just on board. Anne and Concord basically read each other's minds. Granted, that might be thematic, given something we'll see shortly. Hey, Jessica, did you mean to touch my horse because you touched the back of my head instead? No, Concord. She didn't touch you, she touched the back of my head. Oh, no, he feels ill. I guess maybe Jessica touched Concord's soul. Oh, he's back up. He's back up. It's all good. I thought for a second this might be another Mr. Sand situation, like in Mystery of the Soul Riders, but no, he's back upright. I don't know why everyone is insisting something's wrong. All jokes aside, it is again very, very pleasant to see Anne's visceral concern for Concord. They place a lot of emphasis on how much she cares for Concord and how much Concord cares for her. And this is further foreshadowing, though I'm not sure we needed it, that Mr. Sands and Jessica are somehow related. Both of them are capable to inflict horses with some sort of dire metaphysical illness by just being in their vicinity. Thankfully, Lisa knows how to deal with this.
Oh. Lâche-toi là.
Oh shoot. Oh darn. If only there were something, anything I could do about this situation while this guy's literally getting the photos beaten out of him, but there's nothing I can do. There's no way to help. Guess I'll just keep staring at this. I also find it very discomforting that Alex calls the Dark Core goons evil. I mean, they're just working for a well-known corporation. Maybe that makes you evil in Alex's eyes, but still. Hey, yeah, maybe Lisa and Linda aren't so crazy after all. Are we ever going to tell them that and apologize? Probably not. But hey, looks like Alex is hitting us up with some hot tips about how our new maybe boyfriend just got the photos stuffed out of him, and Anne's mostly concerned about the pictures instead of the guy, which isn't a great look. And apparently there's something strange about the photos. Could it be that the photos themselves reveal something supernatural in nature? And if so, could it explain Dark Core's involvement in the photo shoot? I mean, maybe a little bit, because we've got magical horse girl powers. It's quite a pose. I've been poking a lot of fun, but I don't want to understate how much bravery Anne is demonstrating here. She's here for Concord's sake, and this is a very, very, very unwell place. This feels like it's on the edge of reality. Anyway, we can't jump over that gap. Maybe if we had a good jumping horse like Meteor we could, but instead, we're going to have to take the side path to get to the stone tablet, and that means lots of pathfinding and lots of platforming. As I said, it really feels like they went a bit harder with the gameplay this time around. And Anne suggests we be careful as we move about. Don't worry. I'm perfectly careful. But yeah, even if it's very rudimentary, there's a lot more effort put into the interactivity and set dressing and the actual moment-to-moment platforming this time around. And I do think while Anne's character could have been done better for reasons I've already explained, it is the case that her relationship with Concord and what she would do for him is well explored. Like, I get the impression that even if Concord hadn't started speaking to her, she would do this for him, you know? And that bond between rider and horse is a major focus of this game in the series. It tries, honestly, to be more spiritual and introspective in a way that we're just now grazing up against. I don't want to spoil anything. But, you know, as petty and morally questionable as Anne can be, when the chips are down, when her horse is in danger, she's here. She'll jump across a ghastly gorge and chop down trees and break through barricades to go get at him. And while that's not character development, per se, it does illustrate her positive characteristics very well. When I first started this LP after completing the games, I wasn't a huge fan of Anne's character, and I do still think that they did a lot of her traits pretty dirty. But her determination and her love for her horse and the bravery she's displaying right now, I think, are worthwhile. I do think they're successfully communicating why she belongs on the team, why she deserves to be a soul rider, and they haven't even started with that yet. Meanwhile, this gameplay, it's alright. Anne pretends these are puzzles, and so the game pretends these are puzzles, but all you're doing is moving to the end of a linear corridor and pressing the interact button. The actual platforming does require some precision, and we'll see much more of it later, but the puzzles are not puzzles. But even if the interactivity isn't all here, the atmosphere sure is immaculate, and that's fitting because if there's one thing Starshine Legacy has been good at, it's the foreboding, ominous atmosphere. It's pretty good stuff. The torches, don't know who lit those. Maybe they were lit by some magical force. We can't place any of that out of the realm of possibility anymore.
Oh.
I find it very funny that on these drawings on the stone tablet, Linda's little caricature mostly is glasses. Most of her is glasses. It's very funny and probably not great. That's probably not great. It's a bit objectifying, but enough of that. Anne is understandably having a bit of an existential crisis right now, minor one, because she's got to stay focused. It's still all about Concord. But all this stuff about a second world which resides in the hearts and minds of all things, and now being told to travel there to save him, it's still a lot, We were at about a 5 on the magical mysticism meter, and now we're at a 10. We're brushing up against an 11, for sure. Oh, there it is. There's the 11. Yep, that's it. Fail is a little bit of a light word for the situation, Anne. I mean, I admire your optimism and innocence, but fail the situation's a little more dire than just failure. Anyway, we are, yes, for real in another world right now, a world which exists inside of all of us, and we have horse statues to look at. Horse statues which correspond to us and our friends. These statues are not only important to solve a puzzle later, but they illuminate core aspects of the protagonists, like, for example, Lisa is light and life. She illuminates the darkness such that we are never again alone, which is very fitting with what happened in the first game. And this one represents the sun, or Anne and Concord, the radiant Pegasus who defies time and space, and, well, we're doing a lot of defying time and space right now, for sure. And here's the moon, which represents Linda and Meteor, contemplative, aligned with history, seeing visions of both the future and past. And lastly, over here, we have Alex, who we don't really know much about yet, but we do know, according to the statue, that she is a mighty warrior. And we'll take the statue's word for it, because it seems accurate about all the other stuff. I do find the visual style of this place to be quite striking, and although it is a bit barren, I think it's forgivable because of simply how surreal it all is. Like, this turn in the narrative is not completely unprecedented or unexpected, but it is still, ramping up from, as I said, a 5 to an 11. There are dark, swirling spheres of death. We're learning a lore about our history, about our recurrent history even, how we're reincarnations of warriors from long past. And we're about to get the deepest, strangest lore right now. If you had to, guess the scale of this narrative based on the first 2 games, how big would you say the scale is? How immense the threat? It's eldritch, sure, but how eldritch? Well, it turns out, interplanetary, interplanetary eldritch is what we're dealing with right now, because there was, in fact, a planet full of horse warriors who fought a dark god. And hey, it all had to come from somewhere. Dark gods, they come from somewhere. Magical horses, they come from somewhere. Might as well be here. I do find something quite poetic about how Anne's story appears to be the most irrelevant one. Like, it's about a photo shoot and then something weird happens to her horse similar to Starshine, but then she pierces the veil and finds out the truth about practically everything, like how the horses put the Eldritch God on a starship and intended to send it away, but then, the starship crashed into Earth. With Lisa, it's like she has a personal, deeply emotional connection to Starshine in particular. And with Linda, she's trying the hardest to figure all this stuff out. But Anne? Anne just sort of stumbles right into all the answers. And there's some seriously strange answers which solve questions we didn't even know we had, and further ingrain the fact that, yeah, we are reincarnated warriors brought here to fight the darkness. And now Anne's, up to speed. She got here a different way from Lisa and Linda. Her way was a lot more metaphysical, a lot more spiritual, and it's about to get even more spiritual still with a word puzzle. And hey, I get it, that might seem funny. A lot of kids' games have word puzzles, they're usually quite trivial. And this one coming up, it's not exactly a grade A brain teaser, but it does have some neat things going for it. Also, it's related to that giant statue of Fripp. And I bet you were not expecting to see a giant statue of Fripp. Anne sure wasn't expecting it. This, on the surface, may seem like a fairly standard word search asking us to remember the names of the protagonists, but we also have to recall their powers and their relation to those powers. It's a way to encourage internalization of their character traits, and I approve, especially since it's just really deeply romantic, like all of this is. But let's look at the statue of Fripp first. It doesn't look lifeless to me, but maybe I don't have the right eye for this sort of thing. Maybe Anne's upbringing has given her a better sense for the relative liveliness of statues. And first off, we've got Linda here, curious, contemplative, and quiet, just like the moon. Next, we'll move on to Alex, who I know is relatively nearby somewhere, but I'm only relying on my memory. Here she is. Alex is bold, sudden, and striking as a lightning bolt. Or so I assume. She hasn't gotten her powers yet. And next, we have Lisa, the beautiful red star, the red blood of life, the light which illuminates the darkness. That's quite a heavy burden, that one. And lastly, we have Anne, the beautiful, brilliant, radiant, and revelatory sun. A ceaselessly determined golden ray of hope. And that would be everyone if I didn't forget the A on Linda's name.
Saw?
Thanks, Fripp, you're a pal, even if I'm not actually sure what you are still. Anyway, that's what I was talking about when I was describing the ways in which they explore Anne's character through her relationship to Concord. Like, at first it may seem like they did her real dirty, but this episode, this chapter, this game is about nothing else if not what makes a soul rider, being bound at the soul with the horse. And that's something, that's healthy to encourage in real life, not just through horse bonding, where it is very important, but through our fellow man. There was a time that I felt uncomfortable with spirituality and souls and all that jazz because, to standard perception, it's unrealistic, unverifiable, impossible, mystical. But connecting with someone at the soul is verifiable and real, and it's pretty darn cool. We shouldn't shy away from things that are beautiful because they're potentially irrational. That's irrational in itself. What matters is having an open mind and approaching everything with a stern rationality and curiosity. Anyway, I really like the horse game. This is a platforming section, and it's very hard to platform in this platforming section. The physics for jumping in this game are strange. They're very bouncy, and I'm not sure if that's my fault. Like, maybe my configuration is wrong for this game, and it's meant to be played on earlier hardware, but it is quite challenging. Speaking of changing perception, when I first started playing these games, when I played the earlier two games, I was under the impression that, the first one sets some things up. The second one has the best writing because it's the most concerned with explaining itself, and the latter two are a big mess. I don't feel that way anymore. There are things that are quite wrong with this game and the next one, one of them being the disappearance of Josh and Sabine from the narrative. As we've discussed, Sabine and Josh are just gone. I hope you guessed by the time I revealed that to you. But as for the second game being the best because it explains itself the most, I don't know if I believe that anymore. I feel like The Legend of Pandoria, the game we're playing right now, tries to explain itself just as clearly, and it's about approaching it with a heart of curiosity. Back when I first played these games, I wasn't in the right space, the right mindset to understand what it was laying down. And now, the purest test of our bond. We've come here alone, and we will leave together. I'm sure there's quite the enchanting tale of how Starshine Legacy came to be. In some very large way, it still exists today in a variety of forms. Its characters, its story, its setting have been adapted into multiple other media. But, the first Starshine Legacy, I'm sure there's some quite interesting things that led to its creation. When I played the first game, Mystery of the Soul Riders, I brought up that it was odd that a book club for horsey people made a video game series that got released instead of books. Why a video game is being released in a book club? But I no longer think that's weird or strange. This was clearly made with a love for horses and a love for the demographic that it was being marketed toward. Now, is it also corporate? Yes, exceedingly, extremely corporate. There's a lot of cynicism in these games as much as there is genuine love. And there's something beautiful about corporate cynicism in its own way, but it is sort of suffocating as compared directly to all of its philosophical pontificating. Like, I think these games are cool, and I admire a lot of what they stand for, but also, it did eventually get turned into an MMO with, predatory monetization practices and a recurrent spending model, so there's that. But there is for sure a lot more wonder and joy in these games than I gave them credit for, and I look forward to revisiting the fourth game shortly. Also, if you're thinking, wow, this sure seems like the climax of the story thematically and narratively, yeah, but we don't just go back and win the photo shoot or anything. I wish that were the resolution, but we got a filler stage coming up next. One of the funnier filler stages in video games, really. Not quite on par with Ride to Hell, but, Anyway, the path to win looks a lot prettier now that we're on our horsey. I choose to interpret this as thematic.
Mm-hmm. Um, eh, Mama.
You know, Anne says she'll explain later, but I think it would be better for everyone if we explained right now. If we explained everything exactly this second, and then also apologized to Lisa. But, you know, I guess that's not happening. Also, this chapter, this episode, this level, I should say, is where the story complicates itself by several magnitudes and makes things make even less sense. Like, if you're still trying to piece together how Dark Core had anything to do with the photo shoot, well, this is about to try and explain that to you. It'll try its hardest. It'll try its darndest. Lisa, I really am sorry about calling you a nut job, by the way. I've seen things. I've seen things in there.
So? Um, eh,
I strongly considered commenting over that, but I decided not to. I feel like you deserve to experience this scene naked. So we know a little bit more, but not nearly enough. We know that Dark Core desperately wants these photos, though, and we're going to get them back as soon as we collect all the stars lying around. You may have noticed there were no golden stars in that previous level. That's because there are 6 in this one. Goodness gracious. And this is a very, very, very large level. There are Dark Core goons wandering everywhere, there are stars everywhere, there are batteries everywhere, and if they catch us, they take away our batteries, so we have to start over. Something they cannot take from us, however, is our stars, and thankfully, when they spot us, they just chase us. It's not an instant game over. I understand they had a fairly limited budget, but the eight, I think it's nine songs on the soundtrack really get stretched thin. Like, the chase music doesn't feel nearly so special anymore after having heard it so very, very many times. Speaking of the chase music, one of the most tragic things about Sabine's disappearance from the narrative is that she was quite an interesting character, and the game never confirms that she was the Cloaked Rider directly. You can make some assumptions about it, and she's definitely confirmed to be the Cloaked Rider in other media, but the foreshadowing for it and the resolution of it, as well as the resolution of her rivalry with Lisa, we'll never get that. We'll never see that in Starshine Legacy. And her disappearance just makes the whole narrative feel very broken in general. The last time we saw her was when she was competing against Meteor and Linda, and we know she attends the same writing club, and we know she's connected to Dark Core through supplementary material. So it's just strange that she's gone. And I think it's the fault of the game introducing far, far too many characters. Derek doesn't really need to be here, and Jessica, while we don't know everything about her yet, and she does get more depth shortly, also doesn't need to be here. Even though Jessica just got introduced in this game, we eventually learn more about her, sort of, than even Sabine. And it would have been really easy to just make a composite character using traits from Sabine and Jessica instead of making two separate characters. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense to introduce a separate mean girl that's also connected to Dark Core for some mysterious reason, and who has a rivalry with one of the protagonists. That role was already filled, and it's made even weirder by the fact that Jessica is not a horsey girl. She doesn't seem to be a fan of horses at all. And there is a potential in-universe justification for that, a pretty good one too, but is it worth Sabine's complete ejection from the narrative? No, I don't think so. Now that we've collected all the stars comes the easy part, collecting all the batteries, and I would like to say that the battery collection and in general this level design actually isn't bad. As far as gameplay segments go, this one accomplishes a whole lot. You have to navigate an open area with your horse over many obstacles while running from threats, which itself is quite challenging. But also you have to get off of Concord to pick up the batteries, making yourself more vulnerable to be attacked. Narratively, this level is incredibly inane filler. I don't think we really needed to hear about the super solar mega batteries, and even when we get back and get the cutscene that explains what's so darn special about this camera and these pictures, it doesn't really justify this. I think maybe it would have been alright if Derek just kept 12 backup batteries instead of 6. Don't know why he only had 6 backup batteries when the camera needs 12. Anyway, Derek, while we're on the topic of Derek, is ripped. He is an extremely muscular individual. If you look at his character model, his portraits are a lot more reserved, but his character model is extremely well muscled, and he's very plain pandering, right? Especially given that Josh, who already existed prior, was a perfectly normal looking guy. Like, it was actually fairly humbling that Anne was attracted to Josh, because Josh is like a down-home farm boy, you know? And now we got Derek, the mysterious photographer who, granted, he does get punched out, and the photos get flung everywhere, and he lost all his batteries. I don't know how the batteries got so far apart from each other, but that's neither here or there. What matters is my original assertion that Derek is very transparently pandering, and I think that Josh was fine and better for the characterization of this game. Who would you use to fill in Derek's role? It could be anyone. It doesn't need to be an attractive boy. Literally anyone could fill in Derek's role. It doesn't need to be a hunk. Right now I'm looking around the river because I'm trying to plan my escape route. The water is very integral to the rest of the run here, because as I've said previously, if the Dark Core guards catch us, we do lose our batteries, and we don't want to collect them again. So what we're going to do is hop over here, grab the battery, and position Concord such that he's facing the water. Also, I'd really like to point out, it hasn't been this egregious before, and it will be more egregious still. There's no reason for our friends not to help us with this stuff. Like, I know Linda said she'd be right behind us. She had to check something out for research, which is fine. But our other friends could be here, you know? Also, it's time to run. We have to escape. Don't tilt. Run forward, please. We did it. We successfully escaped the bad guys. Now it's time to learn what's so darned special about this camera and these pictures. But first, a victory lap. Just gonna hop on in here real quick. There we go. And then we're going to take a loop around before talking to our friends. Concord deserves to be here for the conversation. After all, he did most of the work.
Oh. That? Oh. Mm-hmm. Hello.
So finally, I get to talk about how stupid this photo shoot subplot is. Alright, let's say the photo shoot was organized by Dark Core, and they needed photos of Anne in order to control her, which is what Jessica was just saying. Then let's consider the fact that Jessica was hiding Derek's film reel so he couldn't possibly take pictures of Anne. That's backwards, right? Like, that's the opposite of the plan. They wanted him to take pictures of Anne so that way they could use the pictures to control her. And if that's the case, they wouldn't be trying to stop her from getting photographed. Anyway, we broke a branch, which distracted the guard in front of the gate, so we can jump it using Concord. Anyway, I'm just having trouble piecing this insane narrative together. Nothing about the photo shoot makes any sense. We even get some context later in the next game, which makes it make even less sense, I think. And to be fair, if you try really hard, you can justify it like maybe Dark Core didn't organize the photo shoot, but they were there to disrupt Derek because Derek works for the government and they don't want him snooping around. But then when Derek did take photos of Anne and revealed that she was a soul writer, it enabled them an opportunity to take the photos and thereby control Anne. It's just such a mess, though. Like, it's such a mess. I'm thinking like 5 layers deep. And again, we get some additional light context in the next game, which makes it make even less sense. So that's no good. I just also don't understand why Jessica was bullying Anne so aggressively, even independent of all the rest of this nonsense. Maybe there's something obvious I'm missing, but it really feels like they just wanted the aesthetic of a complex narrative, and so they made things arbitrarily complex. Like, I understand what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to do a really traditional hero's journey thing with some dramatic irony in it, like, oh, Anne wants to become a model, but the thing which facilitates her becoming a model, those photos, are the things being used against her. And there's ways to do that. They just added so many layers to it. Anyway, we got the photos. We're going to head back to Concord and move through the Dark Core industrial yard, I guess this is, and onto the platform proper. Again, it is worth noting, as ever, that the atmosphere is immaculate. I'm a big fan of that. And, oh man, look, I'm really glad that this game's almost through. It took like an hour to play, sure, but commentating over it, thinking of all the things I had to say, writing down notes, that was a process. Especially reckoning with and re-reckoning with those notes. Like, I'm a very generous person toward art by default, so I assume that there must be a good reason for things, And when there isn't, I have to check and double check and triple check. This jump's pretty cool. It's not much of one, but I like, the sort of 90s PC pathfinding of having to pull open the girder, pull up the girder, goodness. And this jump, they're making it out to be really, really dramatic, but you can make it quite easily with Anne by herself. You actually don't need Concord to make the jump, but you do need Concord later, so we have to take him across. And if nothing else, the dramatic flair, the spectacle of this jump is quite nice. Also, the dark core platform right here is incredibly massive, and there's not much in the way of signposting, and that's fine, I guess, because, again, I really enjoy the atmosphere, but it feels like such a scenic, dark, miserable ride. The gloomy skies hanging above, the metal grate stretched out endlessly, the golden star that I just rode right past, and I forgot to get it, and I'll get it in an extra video, I promise. Just as much as leaving Pandoria, it feels like we're riding toward a conclusion, especially jumping over all these gates in a row. These gates, which are fudged to work in our favor. They are actually really easy to jump over. They just look super tough. There's a lot of drama in this game, both in the interpersonal sense and in the cinematographic. You understand the word I'm trying to say. It may not even be a real word, but I'm trying to say the cinematography facilitates drama, which is impressive because it's a free camera game. You move the camera around. Anyway, they're on that platform over there, and I'm sure there's nothing wrong with just heading straight up and confronting them. No one's tried that yet, maybe that's the way to go. I would like to bring up again, it would be really cool if our friends were here to help us. We're assaulting the Dark Core platform right now to acquire photos, reclaim photos that can control our mind and soul or something. And if our friends were here to help us fight the bad guys, that would be awesome, because we're supposed to work together. The intro text said the sisterhood must be complete. And granted, Concord and Anne, they've got this covered. They're very competent individuals. They've got this handled. They've been to, it wasn't exactly, they've been to another dimension where they did some very literal soul searching, is what I was trying to say, and it wasn't easy. So I think, tackling these two goons, whatever dark powers they may hold, perfectly doable. Let's head on up there and figure this mess out. I'd like to point out that Concord asks multiple times how he looks, and she doesn't answer him, which seems very rude. Anyway, we're not supposed to leave the fenced-in area, but if we do, we can find golden stars on the periphery over here, and if we should try to get them, this happens. Oh boy. So yeah, instead of removing the golden stars, they just put invisible floors. And it is possible to get the golden stars anyway, but you can't do anything with them because you're lost in the void. The yawning void. Anyway, so that's practically it for the Legend of Pandoria, and it's an extremely mixed bag. I don't know if I would say it's overall worse than Mystery of Pine Hill Manor, but it definitely has higher highs and lower lows. There's some really fun spirituality and mysticism in here, as we've discussed. Anne's characterization is absolutely all over the place, and the game introduces characters that don't need to exist and take time away from characters that should and did deserve to exist. To make things more complicated and messier, there's this image on the installation screen for this game where you can see Jessica posing next to Khan, and Khan is Sabine's horse, so that just, like, if you don't have enough, she's not even, you understand there's multiple things wrong with this image. To make things even weirder, this is a dressage competition, and there's no one here competing against us. I'm not sure there is a minimal score to beat, in spite of what Herman says. Sabine isn't here. There's no one else here. Josh is actually in the crowd of all things, but he doesn't speak. This is his last physical appearance, and he gets no speaking lines. And all the things that are messy about this narrative can be fixed in the fourth game. They aren't, but it's possible. Literally all of the problems with this story could be written around in the final one, but the final one has a different agenda. There are three pillars to Starshine Legacy. There's the demographical pandering, there's the complex fantasy narrative, and there's the emotional depth. And the demographical pandering takes the forefront almost 100% of the time. That's why they introduced Derek as that super secret agent hunk, because Josh wasn't hunky enough. That's why they introduced a dark princess to contrast with Anne being a bright, sunny princess. You know, it's all for the pandering. The pandering is here first, and it's a shame because there are some elements of this and Starshine Legacy in general that are quite lovely. We've discussed them at relative length. But that's the nature of these games, you know. They are a product. They have something they're trying to achieve, and that isn't always art first. It's not always about the art first. It is, it is worth noting also that this game did stick with people in a big way. There's a fan blog dedicated to it. People remember it very fondly all these years later, and there aren't too many other things like it, you know. There is media for horse girls and magical media for horse girls. Unicorn Academy came out very recently, but Unicorn Academy is not a video game. It is super cool that there is a dark fantasy epic horse game with magical horses in it. And not just one of them either, but like episodic games, 4 of them, and we're on number 3. That's pretty cool. That's a cool thing. And like I said, I no longer believe it's strange that it exists, but it is neat. It is neat that there was a demand for this sort of thing, and it established a canon which is still around now. I mean, maybe not in the literal sense of canon, but the same character designs and such. The games are unfortunately on CD-ROM, so even though I am very happy to own them physically, they will deteriorate at some point. There are very few things I own on CD-ROM that I consider like preciously valuable, and I'm not sure if Starshine Legacy is one of them, but it might be. It might be. For what it's worth, right now at this very moment, the entire Starshine Legacy series, all 4 episodes, all 4 games, are available to play for free on the Star Stable website, which is what Starshine Legacy eventually turned into. You can go to starshine-legacy.starstable.com right now and play these games. They're available that way. It's not lazy work either. The website has music, it has some transitions, the graphics seem to have increased fidelity, it plays in proper HD. I'm just playing them off the CD-ROM because, you know, that's how it was released originally. But yeah, that's Starshine Legacy, The Legend of Pandoria. Stay tuned for the last one, where I complete the series and get those 2 golden stars I missed, because no, I didn't forget, I promise.
لازم.
No. اه. No. صح. صح.